We're here with Nick Armstrong. If you haven't heard, Glocal has some big plans for 2024. They've got a big year-end campaign to help raise some of the funds to kickstart 2024 to start moving towards those goals. So we'd really like to take an opportunity to kind of unpack in a bit of a longer form what Glocal's doing, who Glocal is, and what does that mean for 2024. We'll dig into a couple of those things in just a little bit, but I do want to hear just big level this year-end campaign. What are your goals? What are you trying to do from now through the end of December of 2023?
Okay, thank you. Glocal is an organization that is a 501c3 nonprofit, and we work very closely with a lot of different agencies that work with refugees, including the resettlement agencies. And, essentially, we are about the idea of mobilizing, training, and then connecting people with refugee families. And we do that through a variety of different programs. We have our Glocal Friends program, our baby showers, our donations, delivery teams, helping families to get set up in new apartments. We have the Glocal Community Gardens as well as English class, and we have Community Connections, which is basically social integration kinds of activities and dinners, and that sometimes we call those peace feasts, but it's a way of really helping those who have come as refugees or forcibly displaced people and to be successful in their integration into the community. And so, that's kind of big picture. In order to do that, we have a team of 12 people that are working directly to manage those programs. And then we have, over 500 volunteers at any one time helping to work those programs. And so the year-end campaign that we have is really to raise $40,000 before year-end to help us support those programs, and so that we'll be healthy as we start next year.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like a lot of nonprofits get into this place where there's so much always a little bit behind on fundraising, always needing to put your primary effort as the leader of a nonprofit towards fundraising. And so, I think it's really cool. It's always a good opportunity to get some of that going, some of the fundraising for big projects or big year goals, and just operations, get some of that going heavier on the front end so that you guys really can get the opportunity to spend a majority of your time leading instead of fundraising. Do a lot of the fundraising at once and then spend the rest of your time leading the operations.
Yeah, that is exactly the nature of kind of the campaign that we're hoping to see.
Love that. Okay, so one thing that I feel like is confusing for a lot of people, especially if they haven't been well connected with refugee resettlement and what it's like to come as a refugee, I think the question of caseworkers, where do caseworkers that a refugee, when they arrive in the U.S., will be assigned a caseworker through a resettlement agency? How does what the caseworker do and what you guys do relate? How are they different? Why do you both need to exist?
Yeah, a caseworker is someone who helps with the overall picture of a refugee integration, and that involves helping get their kids set up in school. It helps with job training and searching for a job to be employed. It helps with housing. It helps with the initial health sorts of screening and the vaccinations and various other aspects of their health as they first come. And so, a caseworker will generally have 25 to 35 different families that they're responsible for. And so with all of that responsibility and overseeing that for each family, there is a limited amount of time that they have in really helping that family to connect with community. And so we work with the caseworkers really as a way of coordinating, understanding the families, understanding their needs, where there's gaps, that sort of a thing. But the primary reason for our existence is one of connection, like I mentioned, the idea of really helping refugee families or forcibly displaced families to connect with the community in a way that they begin to flourish within that community. And so connection is really key to that. A caseworker has so much time and only so many resources to kind of help with those initial things. But what we do is that connection piece, as well as sometimes, when we talk about the friendship, local friendship program, that's a way of really working together with a caseworker and ensuring that, if there are special needs and that sort of a thing, there might be things that local friend can help the caseworker with. But that's an exception. We don't exist to do the caseworker's job. We exist really for that connection piece and helping families to successfully integrate.
Great. Yeah. So it seems like, at least when we've talked, and we'll dig into history here in just a second, but we talk about in filmmaking, and that's where my background is in filmmaking, if you guys didn't know. But you talk about a character when you're making a character or even following a character on a documentary. You talk about their physical journey and then their emotional journey. And so it seems like what you guys have done is you have these refugees coming in, they have this physical journey, which is coming into a new country, not having resources, and a caseworker can come in and really help in that physical journey. And you guys kind of saw an emotional journey, this interpersonal journey of being displaced and disconnected, not having access to friends and family, and what that does to the person. And really came in and filled that gap. And since then, you've filled other gaps, like physical gaps. And we'll talk about some of that with the baby showers and the gardens and all that you've done. But it really started, if I'm correct, as filling in that emotional dissonance that just happens when you no longer have connection to friends and family that you used to. Is that?
Yeah, I would say that. I mean, it's really helping to fill a social gap, because when you think about a family who has had to flee their own country, they have lost not only the physical possessions, and they come with meager possessions generally. You also have a loss of connection to family and community and sort of the social capital that you develop when you grow up in a certain area. You know about that area. You know how to get your car fixed. You know how to, attend to your children's education and health and all of that. But when you come to a new place, you don't know all of those things. And, one of the best ways I've learned to flourish within a community is because I can ask a friend, where is the best place to get my car fixed? Where is the best place to buy for groceries? Yeah, or to, go to the dentist or whatever it might be. There's just a myriad of things that you just don't have the connection or the knowledge of without having a connection within the community. And so that's what local helps with. We're one of a whole community team to help in that process, but we really hope that our organization is one that catalyzes that process, so that families do have connection and they do feel like they're cared for, as well as they feel like they're growing and developing as a human being, as someone who is made in God's image. And, so that's really kind of what we're about. Yeah.
Love that. Okay. So right after this question, I'm going to ask you about how Glocal started, the first things Glocal did. But first, for the audience, in case they don't know or they haven't heard much, I would love you to explain as best you can what it feels like, what the experience could be like for a refugee coming into a new country. I know you already touched on that a bit, but unpack that more for me. What is the experience of a refugee showing up in Idaho for the first time?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that's helpful in answering that is just to think about your own travel. Have you traveled to another country or even another place in the United States? But, particularly into another country, even if it's for a few weeks, there really can be a sense of just not knowing the next step. How is it that I get these certain things done? Sometimes people will go on tours and it'll be laid out for them, but in many instances, if you go to another country and you have a significant amount of time in that country, you're going to feel a sense of loneliness. I mean, because it's whoever you're with. You don't know people from that community. You don't know where things are. Oftentimes language is a barrier. So those are the kinds of things that make you feel a sense of kind of loss and a sense of disconnect and not feeling sometimes not feeling safe, where you just don't know what you're getting into. And so I think when we relate to our own personal experience with regard to travel, that can help understand, what a refugee comes with. Generally, if we're going to travel overseas, we have resources that we've already, saved, and we're using those to make the trip as smooth as possible. Now, the people we're talking about have been forcibly displaced. They haven't chosen to leave. They haven't wanted to leave. And generally, they've spent anywhere from 3 to 7 years in a refugee camp. And now they're coming to a new place that they've never been. There's a sense of excitement that many of them experience, but also a sense of a great deal of fear of, what's before me and that sort of a thing. And so to be able to just kind of connect our own sense of, what would that feel like, and try to put ourselves in their shoes, without the community connections that they have and without, a lot of the resources that they're used to and that sort of a thing. I mean, that's the kind of need that a refugee experiences. How is it that I do have someone that will help me along this road, because I'm still on the refugee highway? It's not like that stopped when I went out of the camp. I've come to now a third country resettlement like the United States, and I want to make the best of it, especially for my kids. And so I really, I really need to have a friend to help me in that. And so, that's.
Yeah. Great. Actually, real quick, very, very briefly, could you just tell us the difference between an immigrant and a refugee? Because I feel like it's more common than it should be that people don't actually know what the difference is.
Yeah. Well, actually, a refugee is a subset of an immigrant. I mean, they're one kind of an immigrant in the sense that they have moved across borders and now they're coming to another country. So they're immigrating in that sense, but they're coming in on a refugee, or a forcibly displaced person is coming in on a special provision. Typically, they're like in the United States, they come in with a visa called an I-94, and that is the permission to be able to be in this country and to be able to also, get the resources from resettlement agencies to get started in the country, even though those resources are fairly meager. That's essentially what a person coming as a refugee is. An immigrant is someone that can decide to move for economic reasons, or it can be just hardship reasons, and they want to come into the country, and so they immigrate into the country in order to find a more promising future for themselves and their children.
Right. So a non-citizen moving to a new country, that is an immigrant. And the subset then of that, of refugee, is someone who didn't choose to come here. They didn't move here for family. They didn't move here for just because there were some more opportunities available or things like that. They moved here because where they were living was dangerous for them. They were forced to leave. They had no other choice. And so that's where those special provisions come in for the refugee.
Yeah, that's true. And, I will mention that third country resettlement is a rarity. I mean, it's in a sense almost like winning the lottery. Only less than 1% of the refugees who would like to go to a third country, such as in Europe. There's 30 resettlement countries in the world, or a little bit over that, and then the U.S. is one of those, a prominent feature of the resettlement program globally. But when they apply for that, most get turned down because of the capacity and various agreements that has to happen between the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees and the U.S. State Department. And there's a lot of different levels of decisions that have to be made in order for, approval of the number of people that come in. But those are less than 1% of the total number of refugees that want to resettle in a third country.
Yeah, it's incredibly tough to hear those numbers, to know how much need there is, especially when you start hearing stories of refugees.
Yes,
hearing what they've been through, hearing what they're fleeing, and that just a need for a home and a place to be, and know that 99% of them aren't going to get that. And even when they do come, knowing how it almost underfunded the resources for them seem to be, and hard to find. It's always tough.
It is. There's an interesting movie that's out. It's been out for about 5 years or more. It's called The Good Lie. Reese Witherspoon.
Yeah, I watched that.
Yeah,
it's a good one.
Right, and there's a depiction in that movie of a refugee family who is looking every day at the board to see if their name is on the list for resettlement. And when you see their reaction when they finally see their name on that board, that gives you a sense of just, what that means to that family. They were just so excited.
To be such a great movie. That's great homework. If anyone wants to know more about kind of the experience of the refugee before and after moving into a third country, that would be a great starting place.
Yeah, it really is.
Very good. Okay, so as you and Laura, your wife, were looking at just the status of the refugee, what it was like to be a refugee, and there were a couple things contributing to you looking into that at the time, right? But there was one specific need you saw that wasn't being filled, and that kind of, between seeing that need not being filled in Boise and seeing that need filled in some other places, that kind of kickstarted the idea of Global. Is that right?
That's correct.
Tell us more about that.
Yeah. So when we first came back, first of all, I guess a little bit of history is that Laura and I lived in Indonesia for 23 years. Laura taught and was a principal at an international school. And then my work was in the area of disaster response, community development. But a lot of my work was with people who had been displaced because of natural disasters. They're actually not a number that's included in the global forcibly displaced, even though they are forcibly displaced by a natural disaster. They're not because of the 5 criteria used by the UN in order to determine what a refugee is. And so these are people that I worked with who experienced a lot of loss. And in my work in Indonesia, I was part of over 30 different disaster responses. And so you get to see kind of what people are going through and the loss they experience, the trauma they experience. And you develop a sense of deep empathy, deep compassion for those who are hurting in that way. And so when we came back to the United States, and started to talk with World Relief, this was a natural sort of area to get involved in. And so one of the first things we did is we went to a conference called the Refugee Highway Partnership. And that was a conference where a lot of different practitioners were involved, where trying to encourage each other, support each other, pray for each other. And one of the organizations that we met at that first conference that we were at was Exodus World Service out of Chicago. And when we heard their story and kind of their mission and all of the things that they were doing, it was like, that's what Boise needs, based on what we had talked with World Relief, who was a resettlement agency at the time in Boise. That really seemed to be kind of a model for us. And so that's where it kind of started. We also learned from Tucson Refugee Ministries out of Tucson, Arizona. And so there are other organizations like Glocal, and we're trying to learn from each other. And we still are very tight. We will go visit, and we will try to learn from them, and they'll try to learn from some of the things we're doing. And so it's a really good relationship. Yeah.
That's great. At the end of the movie, The Good Lie, if you remember, there's the quote that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So it really seems like that's what Glocal has been doing with these other organizations.
Yeah, we hope so. Yeah, that's an African proverb that, we quote all the time. So,
Love that. Good. Yeah. So after that, you guys created what would be your first program. Do you want to tell me what that program? I don't know if program's the word you guys. I'm loosely tying a word to that, but the first thing you guys really did as an organization, what was it, and what need did it address?
Yeah, the first program was the Glocal Friends program, and that was really aimed at really having a group of people. It could have been several families, or it could be a Bible study. It could be a book club, or whatever it is. This was a group that was interested in connecting with refugees, and so we would train them. And then we would work with the resettlement agencies to make sure that there could be a really good fit between this group and the refugee family. And so the whole purpose was, just as we've talked about, is to just create relationship. Oftentimes it developed into some deep friendships, but and there are times where it didn't work out, where the match wasn't, a match made in heaven. It was something else. But for the most part, the vast majority of those who've been part of that program have seen that it not only helps the social capital of the refugee family, but it also is enriching to their own lives in ways that they never expected. And so that was the first program, and I think it's the kind of the centerpiece of our whole melee of programs. Yeah.
Amazing. Great. Yeah. Just when I first heard about that, it was earlier this year when we first started talking about Glocal,
I think that's right.
Yeah. So when I first heard about that, that was something that was really cool to me. The idea that just even the realization in my head that someone leaving their country, forcing to leave, going through this resettlement process, they don't just need their rent paid while they can find a job. They certainly need that, but they don't just need that. They need friends. They need that community we talked about earlier. And it's so cool to have an organization dedicated to providing that for people. I really admire that about you guys.
Thank you. Yeah.
And since then, I mean, you guys have grown to a number of different programs. Do you want to just give us the 10,000 foot view? What all are you guys doing? What programs are you offering? What are you, even beyond programs, are you doing semi-regularly as an organization?
Yeah, well, beyond the Glocal Friends, as I've mentioned, there's the baby showers, which this year, up to this point in the year, we've done 73 baby showers, which is essentially, having a group of people come around a pregnant mama, and she's going to have a baby, and they don't have the provisions. So there's basic provisions provided at that baby shower, but also just a great deal of enthusiasm and love, and just making that person feel safe, and being able to help them through their journey as they have their first child here in the United States. And so that's a big program for us. We also have the community gardens. We have 55 different plots. And that's just really a connection to a lot of refugees leave an agrarian kind of life, and they don't come to an agrarian life here. And so a garden, even though it's a small plot, they can grow some of the vegetables that they're familiar with, and they're getting their hands dirty, and being able to work the soil can be very therapeutic. Sometimes beyond words. I mean, it can be incredibly important part of their healing journey. In terms of trauma and that sort of a thing. Then we also have donations and delivery teams, and those are teams that help with getting furniture into an apartment, getting basic setup kits like cleaning kits, kitchen kits, bathroom kits into a home, so the family isn't starting from zero, or they don't have to use their what they call reception and placement funds, which is an important way of having a little bit of a savings, and to be able to have those expenses deferred, so that they can save some money. And so that's really to help a family get set up. And so that's another part of the program. We have an English class, which we have some great volunteers that are part of that. Laura has started this, and it really, even though there is a great deal of English learning in that it's a 2-hour Thursday morning of essentially right now we have just over 70 women that are signed up for this program, and many of them bring their kids, and so it's bursting at the seams in terms of just our capacity to handle an event like that on a weekly basis. But it's just a beautiful program that not only helps in terms of learning English, but it also helps them in terms of getting out of the house, being able to connect with people from their same country or people from another country. And so that's just become a really important programs. And then we have a community connections aspect to our programs, where there's social integration activities and various dinners that we've had with refugee families. And that's been really important in the last few years, since so many Afghans had to evacuate and come. And that's been a really important part of their own integration. We love that program. And all these programs are all about connection, even though there are practical elements in these that talk about helping families in a physical way. All of these are still behind that is one of connection and one of feeling cared for.
Yeah, you guys are a very relationally driven organization, which
definitely
I really value.
That's the heart of our organization. Yeah.
Amazing. So there's two of those that I want to dig into, and we talked about this earlier. The first one, I would love to dig into the baby showers. I feel like me and my wife Brittany have just started talking about like having a kid, and all the thoughts of like, what are we going to do? How are we going to do that? All the things you have to buy, all the things you have to think about. As someone born in the US, born in Idaho, raised in Idaho, living here, familiar here, speaking the language, having all the resources at my fingertips, it's scary to think about for me. So to imagine doing that as a refugee, is scary. So it's so cool that there is someone showing up to help walk people through that, even in this way. So I know you already touched on it, but just give us a little bit more details on what that's been like. What's it been like for you being able to provide that as an organization for your volunteers that are able to be part of those baby showers? What's that like for them? What value has that added to you?
Oh, to us, it's been incredibly enriching. It's deepened relationships, because oftentimes the new mamas are also going to be involved in the English class and that sort of a thing. But it deepens that. Special moments like just a week ago. Laura, the other co-director, my wife of Glocal, she spent the entire night in the hospital helping an Afghan friend to deliver, and so she was there. There was an official interpreter, which a hospital has to have an official interpreter, and the husband was needing to stay home with the other two kids that they had brought, and so yeah, it just meant the world to her to be able to have someone in the room that she knew, that she cared for and loved. And so to have this Afghan woman experience that through, knowing there's support, knowing that someone else is caring, knowing also that we have a connection to the family and that the family we're coordinating things with and rides and various things. That means a lot. There's also another case where Michelle, who is also kind of one of our co-founders, Michelle Larson, and she spent the entire night with a lady who unfortunately was in a state of having a miscarriage that was very painful, and she had already experienced a great deal of trauma. To have a friend there all night with her, holding her hand, trying to reassure her that we're not going to leave her, we're going to be with her, we're going to be by her side through the whole thing. And so those are the kind of inspiring moments that are just, you can't put into words what they mean in terms of the personal experience. But that's part of it.
Yeah. One of the just really fun things about relationally driven organizations is when you approach something from a relational perspective, from a perspective of we're here to love you well, it impacts everyone involved. Every volunteer gets something out of it. Everyone you're there to help get something out of it. It's just a really special thing. There's certainly, there's your classic church volunteer projects where you go and you paint a wall or something, and those certainly have a lot of value, but to enter into a relationship like this with people, very special.
Yeah, it is. It really is.
Well, the other one I wanted to talk about is the English class. I know these are a little bit fringe, your core thing being your Friends program. But both of these are just really cool, really special, really fun to be around and be involved in. For me, I got to be in Mexico for like 3.5 months last year and didn't speak almost any Spanish going into it. And that was like a shockingly difficult experience. You had these people you started to become friends with, but that friendship could only go so deep. And there were all these things that I knew how to do, but I could no longer do in Mexico because I didn't speak the language. And I know that's a common experience for people when they travel, but having like this dedicated English class where you can go with people who also don't speak English well and start to learn the language together. That's, I think that's an incredible program, and it's really cool. So
it really is.
Tell us about that. You guys, everything from like what all that includes. You guys start all the way at the pickups, right? Getting people in a car to the program. So start there and walk us through what all you do in your English classes.
Yeah, it is an incredible feat to accomplish each week. And so Tamara Fairbanks is our coordinator for that now. Laura had done it for many years, and Tamara is the primary coordinator for that program, and she has done a great job doing that. But there's over 70 women that are signed up. In any given week, it's probably closer to 50 that show up. Many of them come with kids, and so we have a kids program where we try to make it educational time, but also just a time of, hey, we're going to have fun and we're going to just enjoy this time together. And so there's that aspect of it. But it really, if you show up to where we have this, which is the Collister United Methodist Church there on Taft. If you show up on any Thursday morning, what it really looks like is perhaps a UN garden party, or I don't know, I mean, it's nations from people from all different nations, and oftentimes very traditional dress, and many that don't yet speak English, but some that do. And it's really, really kind of, I think one of the encouraging things is to see women who've attended year after year, and now we've gotten to the point where there are women that didn't speak any English when they first started, and now they're helping other people from their own country who maybe are at the very beginning. Perhaps, we have a Syrian gal who didn't speak any English, and she now is really helping in the actual teaching of English to some of her. I mean, within the context of our class, and so there's that sort of a connection that it's just really encouraging to see that kind of a thing happen. Yeah,
it's amazing. Yeah, the class, I feel like, helps so much. For me, there was this time when we first got to Mexico where, everyone's like, you got to learn by being immersed in it, and you're immersed in it, and you start to learn really quickly, and then you plateau off.
Yes.
You learn how to check out, how to ask people if you can pay with card. Learn how to say hi and have your general greetings or ask for directions. And then
where's the bathroom?
After that, where's the bathroom? Like, check, please.
Yeah.
But then after that, like, there stops being as urgent need to learn. And so having a class where you're learning those things that aren't your everyday interactions, learning those things that, and even just having like that drive to keep learning.
Yeah.
I feel like I wish I had something like that. I was trying to like Duolingo all on my own, and that's hard when you don't have like the community and the drive. You can start to get away without learning more.
Yeah, that's so true. And the other aspect of it is, because it's a women's English class, oftentimes women that have come as refugees haven't had the opportunity to connect with the community like their husbands have. Oftentimes the ones that are at work, and they're only strengthening their English, and women are at home taking care of kids and variety of things. I mean, that's a generalization. I don't want to, come off as sexist or anything, but that is a general sort of pattern that you see. And so for women to be able to gather together, be able to socialize, that there's something that's very enriching about that for their lives. And so that's one aspect it's not the primary purpose of an English class, but it is such a big part of what they experience, and to meet other people from other countries as well. So
it's incredible. I hadn't even thought about that variable. So what does it? Maybe this is how I'll put it. How many volunteers does it take to do an English class weekly, from pickups to taking care of kids to your actual teachers?
It's around 30 to 40 people. So we have, probably 5 or 6 people with the kids. We have a good number of drivers. We have people bringing food like fruit and that sort of a thing. We have people who are doing the actual sort of mentoring and instruction piece of it. And then, some people are just involved in just kind of helping with the logistics and, getting chairs in the right place and tables and that sort of a thing. So, between all that, it's about 30 to 40 people, depending on the week. But
and for context, that's about how many people it takes to run a Sunday service at a church. Like, that's a big lift for you guys to do every week. That's incredible.
Yeah, it is. And we've had some amazing volunteers. That's one of the enriching parts of our jobs, is just to see, people, volunteer and want to give, want to serve, and walk alongside these new American friends of ours. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So jumping into the new year, 2024, now that we have a good understanding who you guys are, where you came from, all the different programs you do, what are your goals for 2024? What do you want to do new, and what do you want to do better going into this new year?
Yeah. Well, one of the things we're really cautious about is starting new programs. What we want to do is deepen the programs that we have, because we're not lacking in the number of programs. We have enough programs that I think are relevant and useful and that sort of a thing. And so what we want to do is really to learn how to make those better. And a lot of times that requires more volunteers, some more training. And so we want to ensure that the volunteers are appreciated and they feel appreciated, but also feel like they have the resources they need to do what they're going to do well. And so, yeah, that's, I think, part of the deepening that we're looking at for all of those programs. We are thinking about some small program in terms of perhaps having an opportunity for kids to be exposed to STEM and STEAM and those sorts of things, and to have their parents involved in that. So we're looking at a potential grant for being able to do that, and so that's kind of one of the things that we haven't done before. That even though it's related to our community connection, social integration, it would be kind of a unique area of that. But the rest is just deepening the programs that we have.
Amazing. Yeah. So I want to take just a second to talk on that, because you guys have this goal of raising, how much was it by the end of the year?
By the end of this fiscal year, it would be 40,000.
40,000, which isn't a crazy huge number. And one thing we've seen, and I've seen just this phenomenon over and over again, is when a nonprofit wants to start something new or build something new, people will come out of the woodwork to donate towards that, which isn't wrong. You love the heart of that. It's just somehow easier to communicate, like, hey, we want to build this building, or hey, we want to start this whole new program. When you see on the nonprofit landscape, what starts to happen is this lack of depth and quality in those programs, because it's so difficult to say, hey, we want to take what we're already doing and do it better and go deeper. And so it's cool. It's cool that you guys do want to make this goal of going deeper, and that, and having this goal of saying, we're starting with this. This is step one to take the programs we're doing and go deeper with it. That's special. I really hope for your guys' sake that becomes an incredibly successful campaign. So what do you, I guess I would like to know from you, what does that mean? What happens when Glocal gets to go deeper, when your programs get to be better? What does that start to change for Glocal?
Yeah, I think one is that, when you begin to develop a program that is meaningful for those who've come as refugees, who really have experienced a great deal of loss and are trying to flourish. They want to flourish here, but they're struggling. That sort of a thing. When you deepen and create a program that has a lot of quality and care and concern and thinking through various maybe pitfalls that we've run into in the past, and trying to fix those things, I think what you do is you end up with greater impact on those that we're trying to help and walk with. And I think you develop a culture of, how is it we can serve in a better way, and to not, remain stagnant. Like it's just, this is what we do each year, and check the box. I think it enlivens the volunteers, because they know we care about their own development and, how they will develop as a volunteer. And, so I think it's raising all the boats in a respect. It's not just those who come as refugees, but also those who are walking alongside those refugees. And so as we do that, I think we grow as an organization. People want to volunteer. People know that we really do care about them as a volunteer and want to see them grow in whatever they're doing. So, yeah, I think that's a big thing is that the organization will continue to just be stable and healthy, and to be able to walk alongside what we consider to be holy ground. The idea of getting involved in the life of another human being. It matters how we do that, and so we want to do that intentionally and with care.
Yeah, well, it's certainly been my experience that Glocal is an organization that cares about everyone involved in the organization, from your staff to your board to your volunteers to the people you serve.
I hope so. Yeah.
And I love that about you guys. I think you as an organization deserve every opportunity to level up what you're doing, to be better, to go deeper. You guys have certainly shown the character that would say, at least from my perspective, you've certainly shown the character to say you deserve to go deeper. So I really hope that that these goals are accomplished, that you guys get the opportunities to continue down this path of caring for the refugee in Idaho.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Really excited to see where you guys go.
Yeah.
So, well, that is the end of the content that I had set aside here in my notes. Is there anything else you would like to add that someone who might not know about Glocal or is starting to get interested in Glocal, is there anything else you think they should know?
Well, one of, I think, the challenges that we face is, there is a climate of resistance in a sense, where some of that's just based on not understanding the refugee journey and the highway of the refugee, where there's, just as you were trying to help distinguish between an immigrant and a refugee and that sort of a thing, there's a lot of misunderstanding. And so, one of the things that we really hope for is that we are part of helping to mobilize the church. And to do that, I think it's important to recognize that when there was a survey that was done, I think it was the Pew Research Center, and they did a survey where they said that only 12% of American evangelicals begin to process or begin to think about immigration issues through the lens of the Bible, through a biblical perspective. And what that tells you is that, there's other sources of their lens that get shaped, and they may listen to a sermon once a week, but there's all sorts of cable news and social media and various influences in which that shapes essentially their understanding of immigration, their understanding of refugee resettlement. A good statistic that goes along with that is that those pastors who do affirm a biblical perspective on immigration and refugee resettlement, who really want to care for the refugee, of those 86%, of those pastors who are 86%, only 8% are actually doing something on a local level with refugees. And so we'd like to change that. We'd like to change that sort of way in which to help churches to get involved, to help churches come alongside us, because there is a uniqueness to Glocal. There's not a whole lot of other ministries. In fact, there are no other ministries like Glocal in Boise and in the Treasure Valley. And so you find a handful throughout the nation that are doing similar things. But this is it's an opportunity for the churches to connect with refugees through a ministry that, has a very similar, biblical worldview and perspective. And so, my hope is that as part of our growth for next year is that we have more involvement on the part of the churches here in the Treasure Valley.
Love that. Yeah. So anyone who's not a Christian, you can get so much from doing something like this. It's such a big part of what it means to just be human, to love people. And as a Christian, I think it goes deeper. It becomes part of our responsibility. It becomes part of who we are. You get this idea of faith, this prophecy in the Old Testament of like a river coming out of the temple into the desert, and all this fresh life growing out of there, and the idea of the tearing of the veil of Jesus, and just this big picture idea that God wasn't waiting for us to come to him. It's not that I think N.T. Wright said that God didn't sit in heaven, or Christianity isn't about waiting to die and go to heaven. Christianity is about God coming to earth and dying, and this idea of going out into the desert places, having this responsibility to be a blessing to all nations. And I think we find some of who we are doing that. I mean, I know I'm going on a tangent here, but certainly as a youth pastor, which I was doing before this, you would ask people, what's your closest experience you've had with God? And it was always these mountaintop moments, these conferences, these winter camps, things like that, which are these wonderful moments, right?
Right.
And we have these awesome mountaintop moments with God, but the whole story of the gospel is God coming down off the mountaintop into the valley.
Yes, absolutely.
And so there's something about who we're called to be, to come into the valley, to find the people that are hurting and love them there. And there's something that you find Jesus in a different way there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I love that you guys are an opportunity to do that for churches.
Yeah. And when you look at world history, it's a history about migration. And the biblical story is a story that is filled with a history of migration, from Abraham, and to Jesus, and his family had to leave Jerusalem, or to leave Judea, because of Herod's tyrannical rule, becoming a refugee in Egypt with his family, and then we see him teaching his disciples, "Inasmuch as you have welcomed the least of these, you've welcomed me." So so his identity is so intertwined with this sense of vulnerability and a sense of being a refugee, that we begin to see what the gospel looks like when we look at his life and death and his teachings and just his example. And so, that's such a big part of, what forms who we are. Yeah.
Certainly, if you are a person of faith and you've started to feel like a lack of meaning and purpose in your faith, I think there's a chance it's because you're not doing what Jesus is doing. You're not living like Jesus was. And if you start, I think people might find the purpose and the meaning of their faith comes to life. They see Jesus, who Jesus was. They see people how Jesus sees people.
That's such a good point. Yeah, because it's not just about head knowledge. It's about stepping forward in trust and faith, and to see what sort of change God is going to do in your own life, and the transformation there.
Yeah. So then, if for our audience, if you're part of a church, if you're part of a small group, whether you're a leader or a follower, I would really encourage you, find some people, whether it is your small group, whether it's just some friends of yours at the church, whether it's inviting your church leadership to be part of Glocal. This is an opportunity to go deeper with your faith, to find a part of your faith that you cannot just find in a Sunday morning or in a small group.
Yeah,
go
totally.
with people who love Jesus and love others like Jesus loved them. It's going to change your faith, I promise.
Yes. I couldn't think of better advice.
Love it. Well, Nick, thank you so much for your time. I'm really excited to see what happens in this year-end campaign for 2023 and what that gets to mean for Glocal in 2024.
Well, thank you for having me. Yeah.